It feels like there's always something happening right now. A new headline, a new crisis, a new thing people are supposed to be worried about. And whether we realize it or not, that constant exposure starts to affect us, not just emotionally, but physiologically, because the human brain is wired to pay attention to threat. Thousands of years ago, that helped to keep us alive. But today, the threats aren't occasional anymore. They're constant, and they're being delivered directly into our pockets all day long. And in industries like construction, there's another layer to this. A lot of people in the AC industry already work in environments that require constant anticipation, catching mistakes, managing risk, staying ahead of deadlines, thinking about what could go wrong before it ever happens. In many ways, people in this industry are professionally trained to stay mentally alert. So when you combine that with nonstop external uncertainty and fear, it becomes hard for the nervous system to ever fully settle. And over time, that creates something a lot of people are quietly feeling right now: mental exhaustion, emotional heaviness, a sense that it's hard to ever fully relax or disconnect. So, today we want to talk about the cost of constant threats, why fear captures our attention so easily, how modern media environments amplify it, and how staying in a constant state of alert can quietly contribute to stress and burnout. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff,
And I'm Rochelle.
and this is Burnout Banter. Before we jump into today's episode, remember to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you can stay up to date with the latest banter. So, I guess, Rochelle, let's start with a question of, do you feel like people are more emotionally exhausted right now than ever, whether it's at work or outside of work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hi, millennial on the podcast. There's a millennial meme going around right now that I find fascinating just this week, and it's literally just screenshots of millennial social posts that are like, why is it suddenly so hard to just exist? It's not just work, but like, I can't, I'm tired on the weekends too. I'm tired after work. I'm just constantly fried. And I think that it is not all just work burnout. I don't think it's all just the cost of work. I think it's that kind of general emotional exhaustion that we're just shouldering and not really sure how to survive right now.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the world, it seems. And what's interesting, I know this is your favorite guy, but Darren Hardy talks all the time about how we actually live in the safest time we've ever lived in human history. And he talks about, there hasn't been a world war yet for many years. How one of the craziest stats, I think, is that you would have to leave your kid unattended outside on the sidewalk for like 700 years for them to be kidnapped based on how many kids are kidnapped today.
So
And
wild.
so, yeah, it is a lot. But yeah, we're fed constantly, right? This idea that the sky is falling. It's very, very chicken little-ish, whether it be AI or wars or politics or whatever it is, right? It's just constant threat.
Agreed. Agreed. I think that the media hinges on fear because fear sells, the negative sells. Why do you think that that fear grabs our attention so much more than these, like, positive stories when we clearly need the positive more than the negative in our daily lives?
Yes, I mean, it is physiological, right? Because our brain is hardwired to notice and prioritize threat. And thousands of years ago, that mechanism kept us alive. So, like, if you were introduced to a new environment or a new tribe or, had new living conditions, right? Any change to that was perceived as danger, right? That's how we interpreted it. And so our brain created a hack to help us cope with that. It essentially says that anything that's known is safe and anything that's unknown is a threat. And that's kind of how our brain filters risk. And so, I think we're reacting. And the other thing that we do is we react to emotionally threatening situations the same way that we do physically threatening situations. And so I think the media, as you said, has figured out that the thing that generates the most ad dollars is to keep us in this constant state of threat. Like that's what we're going to pay attention to because our life, in air quotes, depends on it. And so they know that we're going to tune in and read. Even if you look at AI, right? Like I was just reading something the other day that talked about how who's pushing the narrative that AI is going to take everybody's jobs? It's the companies who are creating AI that are trying to get funding. And so if they can convince all these companies that look how much money you're going to save, then companies will invest in it.
Right.
And it's not that it's gonna take everybody's jobs, right? It's nothing new that we've experienced, right? There was the Industrial Revolution where assembly lines are gonna take everybody's jobs, and, there's the internet boom or the digital boom, right, of the late '90s or late '70s, early '80s that was gonna take everybody's job, and so they're selling this concept that it's gonna take everybody's jobs because they're trying to raise funding, because 'cause they're trying to build gigantic data centers that cost a lot of money.
Yes. It's like the snake eating its tail though, a little bit, right? Like we create these situations to garner the attention for them for whatever outcome, but then we create this negative outcome and it comes back to bite us, I think.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
those AI companies, I mean, they are actually laying people off. We see the tech company layoffs
Yeah, for
daily.
sure.
For sure, but then we see these higher backs, and then we see, like, the negatives come back to the research that's like, "Oh, actually, AI does not realize the efficiencies that it realizes," and so we cycle. We go back into the fear, and then we come back out, and I think every example you just gave, industrial, digital, all of the revolutions did the same thing. Fearmonger, we kinda dip down, and then we come back around, and we just cycle. Humans are not capable of escaping the cycle.
I think there are some really smart people who know how humans operate and are using that against us, even though we're in this time that is incredibly safe, right? Like social media amplifies fear, the media amplifies fear, and our brains just tuned into that. And I think a lot of people who benefit from it know that and use it against us.
Oh,
And we
absolutely.
don't learn because there is nothing to learn, right? Like you're not going to get rid of that part of your brain that perceives threat.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do you think that most people realize how much fear-based information they consume every day?
I think we do. Like, I don't think it's a secret that social media bad. I don't think it's a secret that we literally call it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
You're just casually browsing. It's called doom scrolling. Like, we know that what we're looking at is bad for us. We know that what we're looking at is not necessarily healthy. And it's like our brain's way of checking out. So I think we do realize what we're doing. I think we do realize that so much of it is fear-based. I think we've normalized it, perhaps, and we don't know how to break that cycle.
Yeah, I also think people don't realize the impact that it has on them. So, hopefully my in-laws don't listen to this. But we were driving home from graduation lunch yesterday, and we were looking at, we're driving east, and there's some really cool, like, storm clouds to the east. And our drive home became consumed of, like, where are these storm clouds? Is it gonna be raining on us when we get home? Is it gonna rain over the house? Like, which way does the weather move? And, as we move through streets, we change perspective and it changed the way you were viewing it. And it became this whole conversation the whole way home. And it's like, who cares
You
if it's
can't
going to
control
rain on us or
weather.
not? There's nothing we can do about it. And I very quickly watched my son start to like because they had tapped into his fear-based threat, threatening. And now he's worried about, is it going to be raining because he wants to go out and play basketball and blah blah blah. And so it was just very fascinating to watch this whole drive devolve into fear over whether it was going to rain or not, which really is only up to one person. It's not up to any of us, right?
Crazy. The weather wants to do.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. So if you go back in time, right, the level of threats or the quantity of threats that we were dealing with was not very high, but it's become constant at this
Right.
point, right? And we weren't designed to carry the amount of constant threat that's being thrown at us. We just our operating system has not evolved to deal with that level of threat. So now, right, we're wars like global disasters, weather disasters, virus outbreaks, layoffs, political conflict, AI disruption. It's just like that's all we hear about all day.
Absolutely. Like, modern environment has evolved faster than our biology has,
Yeah.
because sharp curve, technology, access to information rapidly evolved in human brains, as sophisticated and incredible as they are. Very slow to evolve.
So I don't know that the level of bad news has increased, right? Like how much bad things are happening in the world probably hasn't increased. You think back to like the plague, there was probably a lot of bad stuff going on then too. You just were sitting on your farm completely unaware of what was going on while the
It's
plague was
the
happening.
It's the access to it. You're right. Like you said, we're in one of the safest times we've ever lived in. That's true. 70s was like the land of the serial killers, right? It was like the peak of that. Lots
Yeah.
of bad news there. Hear about it the way that we do today. And even though it's far less of a threat to me today because I listen to true crime all the time, I'm like constantly worried that that is like a thing that I need to worry about. I'm like, no, 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 no. We're much better at identifying them, preventing, taking care of, finding. We're
Yeah.
good. So it's the access has significantly increased. It wasn't that long ago that like the news was not 24 hours. Like
No. It's
this was
just it's
pretty
just
much
one time or two times a day, right? You had your local news and your national news. And it wasn't and even like now you look at local news and it's like at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and then it starts again at 3 p.m. and it's just
exactly.
nonstop.
We used to sign off the air and get, like, the little snow screens, right? I'm not quite at that age, but, like, it was right there. I at least recognized that it was close to, you know, when I was born. We don't have that. We don't have that. We have no way to check out unless we choose to check out. So my question, I guess, is, like, what is the difference for us in choosing to stay informed versus, like, this staying emotionally activated and not being able to look away?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you need to be informed of things that have an impact on you, right? Or something you could do anything about, right? There's so many things that are happening that I have no control over. I have no say over whether it happens or not. And so, do I need to worry about those things? Or if something is happening, right, then do I need to get informed because it's going to affect me, right? If you think back to COVID, at a certain point, there was nothing that any of us could do based on what was going to happen there, right? But what do I need to know to make sure that I'm safe? And once that's actually hit, then I can learn that. If we're coming up on an election, right? Like, what do I need to know to vote? Well, I can
Exactly.
do my own research. I don't need to be in that every day for 4 years worrying about what's happening in Washington because there's really nothing I can do outside of maybe go protest and vote. So,
Local elections, intermittent elections, also important.
so I think, right, it's discernment of what do I need to know versus everything that's being fed at me.
I think it gets overwhelming Because there's also that narrative, you should be informed about everything that's going on, you should be forming your own opinion, you should be doing your own research, which is important, I'm not saying don't do that. But you're right, we have to filter the things that are important to us, that affect us, that we care about and can do something about, and figure out, like, what energy we have to give to that. I would
Yeah.
love to be everywhere all at once, doing good across the world, but I'm physically incapable of that. I know a lot
Yeah.
of people who are superhuman and stay on top of all of the things because that's just their passion, and they can draw the connections between, "I see this thing happening, and it affects my local community in this way, therefore, like, I need to be engaged and aware of how that's affecting things." I struggle a little bit with that, and so I have to very, very much filter what I am taking in and how I'm consuming it and how I'm processing it, and it's tough. It is tough.
Yeah, and back to your example, right? Like this serial killer thing, a podcast or a show about it, right? Am I watching that or listening to that for entertainment and just as something to have fun with? Or am I now taking that and translating that into worry about when a serial killer is going to get me?
That's how it starts. It's a
I know.
podcast in the background, great to listen to, while you're out running. Nothing like a good kidnapping story. But then it soaks in, right? You listen to enough of them, you start to see the same patterns that, like, profilers and stuff do, and you're like, "Oh, oh dear.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to switch and listen to something happy."
So I think, right, it does have an impact on us physiologically when we're constantly in threat mode without rest and without a break from that. So maybe even to your example, right? It's do you listen to that kind of a podcast all the time or do you give yourself a break
Right.
and listen to something different? So, but it does, cortisol levels, and I know cortisol levels are all over. Everybody's talking about cortisol levels right now. It is a buzzword and they do spike. Trying to think what the word is for what people are doing when they spike somebody else's cortisol levels. I can't think of it right now. I just listened to something with my son about it. It's stupid.
Oh, I would say
Um,
lots of things other people do
huh?
spike my cortisol. Lots of things that other people do spike my cortisol. So
Yeah,
I need
I
more of that.
can't think of what it's called. Looks maxing. That's what it's called.
Oh dear.
Yeah, all
Oh,
the different types of maxing.
I learned the maxings recently, and I just can't. I'm gonna be the old woman shaking fist at sky and yelling at
Well,
clouds. I can't.
so when cortisol spikes, it does impact our sleep. It impacts our focus, our mood, our energy. When you doom scroll before bed, it disrupts your nervous system recovery. Like I had a client one time and he couldn't sleep. And I was like, just track what you're doing for a week before you go to bed. And it became real obvious why he couldn't sleep because he was on social media looking at political stuff and getting himself all fired up. And so we had him stop doing that and play with Legos before he went to bed. And miraculously, he could sleep.
I love that. I have to watch, like, something warm and fuzzy before bed. Like, I have to we have to switch to very, like, light rom-com or a cartoon or something,
Yeah.
and absolutely no phone. No phone.
So we're exhausting ourselves because we're staying in this constant elevated state, even though you may not be physically overworking yourself.
Yeah.
And even like sports, right? Like most of us use that as like a fun, really filled thing. But when you're constantly reading about, well, where are the Broncos projected in the power rankings and what's their record going to be? And like we're in the middle of nothing happening, right? The season doesn't even start until the middle of August. So you have 3 months until they even play a game. And it's got y'all worried about what's going to happen in the season. And
Don't know this
it's
stress.
because
I really
they've gotta get people to watch or to tune in or to read their articles, so,
yeah, to stay relevant. There's no
yeah.
seasons anymore.
So, if you consume some stressful content, how easy is it for you to relax, or have you figure out any ways to help yourself relax.
I've gotten much better at noticing, like, the physiological responses when I get stressed, especially when I'm trying to wind down. I'm not so good at it during the day because 'cause I'm used to, like, starting my day plugging into whatever I need to plug into, and that just, like, instantly spikes my stress because that's who I am as a person. But when I'm trying to wind down for the day, I can feel, like, the chest tightening, the heart racing, I get flushed, like, it takes me a while to cool down. And I'm like, "Ah, I did something I shouldn't have done. I either, like, read something that upset me, I heard something that upset me, I interacted with somebody that upset me." And it takes a while for me to wind down. I have not always been like that, though. Sometimes, like, you just doom scroll and you don't realize that it's doing that to you. And then you're like, "Why am I tossing and turning and so uncomfortable?"
Yeah, have you ever had it have you in a bad mood for, like, several days and you're not even sure why you're in a bad mood?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, "Why am I so salty?" I had a week where my coworkers thought it was really funny, but, like, I was complaining about Claude being sassy, and, like, I said something else, and they're like, "You're on a roll this week, Rochelle, you're just really salty." I'm like, "I don't feel angry, but I guess I am in a mood." And it was probably just because of whatever external factors were going on at the time.
Yeah. So, I think, all of us deal with this. We're all exposed to it, but I think our industry adds a unique layer to that because there's so much external stress that is a result of our industry. And then we have our internal stress that we all deal with, right? Am I good enough? And when are they going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing? When am I going to be exposed? So you have internal stress, external stress from the industry, and then external stress from everything that we're ingesting.
Absolutely.
So, how do you think that impacts people in our industry?
I feel like it compounds, right? Like, I think you said it at the top of the episode, we are training ourselves to stay mentally on all the time because we're constantly anticipating what could go wrong. I feel like that's half of my job in marketing
Yeah.
is in meeting where a proposal can go off the rails and trying to throw up a guardrail before that happens. Right, putting in false deadlines, figuring out the personalities I'm working with and how to manage them so that they don't cause me headaches down the line, right? So you're just, like, constantly in that state of mental alertness, and you get rewarded for it, right? Like, safety is probably the clearest one, like safety managers, safety on the job site, you're constantly being aware of and mitigating or, like, preventing risk, and you get rewarded for that. You're vigilant, you're good, you go home safe. I think it's less noticeable for those on the office side, but we're in the same boat. Like, I put up those guardrails in advance. I get rewarded by a smoother process, but it's
Which
taking
which does benefit you in terms of getting promoted and getting elevated within the industry too. So I do think it shows up on that side also.
absolutely, absolutely. I wonder if we in the AEC industry experience kind of this high alertness differently than other industries do.
I would guess it exists in most industries, right? If I'm a lawyer, I'm also constantly trying to figure out what's going to go wrong or what somebody's going to say and how am I going to react to that. Obviously in the medical profession, like I watch Angie, she's constantly at work trying to anticipate, is this baby going to behave or not behave and what's going to be the outcome of that. And so you're sitting there watching strips, right? And seeing how they're reacting to being delivered and what impact that's going to have on people. So I do think it shows up for most. But I do think like the amount of money associated with what we're doing, it's not life or death, obviously, but it can be depending on if somebody gets injured on the job, as you mentioned, the safety aspect of it. But I think for most of us, it's the financial ramifications of a mistake, of something going wrong, are so big that it brings with it an extra level of stress. If you've ever been in a lawsuit around anything in our industry, it's not fun. It's extremely stressful and threaten your livelihood, right? If you have something happen against your license or whatnot. So,
Oh, absolutely. That'd be terrifying.
yeah. But I think that, it's good to plan. it's good to plan for all outcomes, right? But it's when we try to control and force an outcome that gets us into trouble because we don't have full control over what the whole team does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You feel like that constant vigilance over time starts to erode our sanity a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And our body's only way to deal with that is to have us burn out, right? If you don't give yourself a rest from the chronic stress that is coming at us internally, externally outside of our industry, if you don't rest and recover from that, you have no shot. You know, we've developed a lot of endurance. I was just talking about endurance in a keynote I did recently and how that's different than resilience, right? We have people in our
Yep.
industry who have very high levels of endurance because that's what it takes to survive. But everybody will break at some point. You can't have unlimited resources of endurance, right? If I were to run a marathon and I trained for it, I could do it. But if somebody told me to turn around and run another one, my body would probably break.
Uh-huh. I don't even know if I
Now
could
there are people who have trained, right, to do that, right? Iron athlete or whatever. But at some point their body will break too. And I think that's what people in our industry just don't realize. No matter how much endurance you have, you will break and your body will put you into burnout just to try to protect you.
absolutely.
So I think, when we talk about burnout and you look at the formal definition of burnout, it almost always has to do with work. And I think you and I disagree with that a lot. I think there are a lot of other aspects to our life that can create burnout too.
Yeah, I think the work connection to burnout is what kind of propelled it into the public light, especially in the last, 5 to 7 years or so. And I think as we continue to talk about it, finally, we'll start surfacing more of that emotional burnout, familial burnout, media burnout, AI
Fear
fry
burnout.
is the term. Yeah. I saw AI fry recently, I think has been coined as a term as well. So
Yeah. People are carrying a lot of stress that's not theirs to carry. And I think that's where we kind of need to start is how do you offload some of that stress that's not yours to carry.
absolutely.
So I think you touched on this before, right? But it's how do we stay informed where we need to be without overwhelming ourselves? So being aware is healthy, being activated nonstop is not.
Right.
And being intentional about how you consume things instead of being compulsive about how you consume things can be really helpful. So, right, limiting your doom scrolling before bed, setting boundaries on your media consumption, right? If you want to watch the news, but only watch an hour of it or half an hour of it. Don't watch 6 hours of it.
It's probably repeating a lot of the same stuff. You're getting the highlights. You're probably
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And paying attention too to how certain things that you consume affect your body, right? If watching or listening to serial killer podcasts, it's starting to affect you. Maybe it's time for a break.
I'm just constantly aware of my surroundings now. It's just modern day life. It's what you have to
Yeah.
do for.
And then how do you create time for silence and time for recovery? And I think too often we think about recovery as my week vacation from work, and it doesn't need to be that.
I was thinking about in context of what we've been talking about, people do like digital detoxes, right? They step back, they cancel their social media, whatever, and then they come back. And I think, that step back is healthy, but what is healthier is setting up like long-term day-to-day boundaries around how you
Yeah.
consume. Like take your step back, take your detox, delete it all for a month or whatever it is. But when you do come back, make sure you're not going right back to the doom scrolling and the being on constantly and checking it regularly. Set those limits for yourself and you'll be in a much better place.
Yeah. Yeah. And even 15 minutes or 20 minutes away from it can be really good for you during the day. I think when we wait or defer our rest, with vacations. it's super stressful leading up to vacation. Vacation is then I'm exhausted and I'm passed out the whole time or trying to catch up on sleep and then dreading what I'm coming back to. So I think when we try to build the rest and recovery in that way, it's not very effective because we're so depleted by the time we get to that point that it's all we can do to survive. But do you think people feel guilty when they're disconnecting? Is that what keeps them on or
I think so. I think that goes back to that circle, right? Like the media tells us to be terrified, but it kind of also builds in this like if you're uninformed, then you're a bad person or you're in trouble or whatever. How could you not know this? How are you not aware of these issues? And so I think we do feel guilty when we disconnect. We're not on top of all of the things all at once, but it is impossible to hold on to all of the things all at
I
once.
also think people are afraid when they're in a social setting, right? And a friend brings up a certain topic and you don't even know anything about the topic, right? Like we don't like how that feels.
Exactly.
I think it's okay to not know everything that's going on and, choosing what you pay attention to.
I feel like that's a social skill we need to relearn is saying, "Oh, actually, can you tell me more about that?"
Yeah, that's why I was just going to say that's a good point.
Ta-da, you now have a way to engage with somebody conversationally in a much more interesting way than, "Ah, yes, I've heard about that. Let me spend the next 15 minutes setting my flag in the sand and declaring what my stance is." You can create a
Yeah,
discourse when you don't know, and that's great for
yeah,
healthy relationships and community.
yeah. Really good point. So I think, right, the trick is how do we stay informed of the things that are important to us? And I think you need to spend some time reflecting on what is actually important to you. What do you want to know about? I do prioritize knowing about sports. There's so much sports information in my brain that other people could care less about. But to me, that's more interesting than some other topics. So that's what I choose to focus my attention on. But I try
I
not to get too wrapped up in what's happening and the crap that people are making up in the off season because there's nothing else to write about.
That's fair. Fair, healthy. I will continue to choose to listen to my true crime podcasts, but continue to remember to intersperse them with light and fluffy and happy things.
Yeah. Anything else to add on this topic?
I think we covered this one thoroughly. Of course, if anybody has questions, they know where to find us.
So you
We
ready
are
for a burning question?
yes.
And now it's time for burning questions.
This comes from a project engineer at a large commercial contractor. And they said, I feel like my brain never fully shuts off anymore. Even when work slows down a little, I still feel mentally on edge, like I'm waiting for the next issue, email, or problem to show up. And I used to just think this was part of working in construction, but lately it feels like I'm carrying that everywhere, even at home or on weekends. And this is something I noticed a lot, especially with the engineers that I work with, right? We work on projects, projects are cyclical. You push really hard to get a project out the door, and then you kind of default back to not having as much to do. And that
Right.
worries people. And that worry creates a different kind of stress, but that stress is the same from our brain's perspective as the stress of working on the project. And it just stays elevated, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about is that our brain cannot handle elevated stress for long durations of time.
Oh, for sure. It happens in marketing too. Like we get an influx of proposals and interviews and events out the door. And then we have this downtime and we have a mountain of wish list tasks, I call them, things that we would like to do because they'll either, continue to amplify the brand or whatever. Will make life a little bit easier for us in the future instead of having to like hunt through old things. We close on our proposals. So we just make work for ourselves constantly until the next influx comes in instead of, hey, we got everything out. Let's take a minute to pause, to breathe, to recharge, and then go hit the wish list or then hit the next influx if that's what came in. But we can't You can't do anything if you're constantly and you're gonna freeze yourself, you're gonna burn out, you're gonna stress out. You're definitely not operating at the level you need to be operating if you're constantly creating that perception of, "I have to be working, I have work, I'm doing this for future me." No, the best thing you can do for future you is take a break.
Yeah, I think, there's always one more thing or one more thing or one more thing. And if we stay in that mentality, right? Oh, I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm just going to do one more thing. An hour or 2 hours will go by and we're still sitting here working. And I think the best thing a person in this situation could do, right, is to think about, I'm going to back into this. And we've talked about intention before, right? But if I could have anybody think anything about me at the end of the day, what would I want them to think? And then can I practice showing up that way, even though we have no control over if somebody's going to think that or not? So maybe it's focused, maybe it's communicative, whatever it is, right? We can only deal with what's in front of us, and we really don't have any control over what's going to happen next. So can we just work in a way that we'll be proud of at the end of the day? And if something happens, then we'll deal with it then. If it doesn't, then we won't. But you've gotta deactivate that stress level of, well, what if, what if, what if?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't do it intentionally, but I occasionally just watch those wish list tasks to see how long they stay on the list before they no longer are relevant, and I haven't gotten to them yet anymore. The world has never ended because I hadn't gotten around to updating a resume or a project sheet. Would it have been nice if I got there? Yes, probably would have saved me a couple of headaches down the line, but I would have had different headaches. So yeah, those things sometimes just kind of chill on the wish list and eventually fall off because they're not actually as critical as my brain is trying to tell me they are in the moment. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
us, it's hard, but benefit from taking a very ruthless, critical eye to the things that we think we need to be doing and instead like, identify what's actually going to move the needle, to use corporate speak, versus just continue to make us look and feel busy and accomplished.
Also think if we focus on the outcomes, right? Like how many things did I get done during the day? It's never gonna be enough.
No.
It's never gonna be how many things we think we can get done during. And when we approach it with that mentality, you're right. You're never going to stop thinking about the things that you didn't get done. But if we approach it from the mentality of, I wanted to show up at work this way, and I did that, and I got 3 things done, and I'm really proud of myself for the 3 things I got done, then we can rest because we're seeing ourselves not from scarcity, but from abundance, right? Like, look at everything I did today. Now I can rest and recover and get ready to do more things tomorrow. But if we approach it from that scarcity, like I didn't get enough done, we're never going to feel like we can rest.
Exactly. We have a rule at Pi that we get 2.5 things a day done when we meet, and I try to carry that through outside of the week that we meet together
Yeah.
into the rest of my life. I wanna do 2.5 things a day really, really well instead of trying to get through 50 things as quickly
Don't
as
you think
possible.
if it's pi, it should be 3.14 things done every day?
Yeah, I don't math. Intentionally don't math. Don't do that to me. Don't scare me with the numbers. Fine, Jeff, I will do 3.14 things a day. And now you've just increased my workload, but I will do them very, very well.
It's good. It's a
Doing
number that never
yeah,
ends though, too. So I feel like in some ways there's a release in that. I'm never going to get to the end of this number of things done. I don't know.
or
Maybe
the
that's just semi
terrifying
engineered.
pressure that I'm never gonna get to the end of this number of things done. Maybe
Well,
it's
you're never going to
reflective.
get done. You're never going to get done either way.
The point 0.14 da 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 is just the never-ending wish list.
Yeah.
You know, you just accept it. It is what it is.
All right. Well, friendly reminder to our listeners, if you have a burning question, you can email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. Please remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on Audible, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure that you never miss an episode. And finally, if your organization's struggling with burnout and stress management, Rochelle and I offer in house coaching to help your staff get back on track. Again, reach out to us at that burnoutbanter at gmail.com email or via LinkedIn for personalized support tailored to your team's needs.
And with that, we remind you that crispy is not a career strategy. And we'll see you all next time.
See you next time.